And we're back again. This is Business Insider India's chat on all things crypto, where we catch up on the news with folks who are making the news, and hopefully we'll also hear things that will make news. We have Preethi, Kasireddy, and Nischal Shetty. If you're a crypto enthusiast, you already know them, but for the uninitiated, Preethi is an entrepreneur, writer, and an engineer with extensive experience in the crypto space. Nischal Shetty is the founder and CEO of WazirX, which is India's leading crypto exchange. Now, we're going to flash their Twitter handles shortly, and you can follow them and continue the conversation that you hear. But to kickstart our fireside chat, let's talk news. Now, China is cracking down on crypto. On one hand, you have countries like El Salvador who are enthusiastic. On the other hand, you have China who's like dropping the hammer. What are the global ramifications of this move? Preethi?
I personally think this is actually a good thing for crypto and Bitcoin specifically in the long run, because there was always criticism that Bitcoin is centralized because a lot of the mining happens in China. So this is almost like a test for Bitcoin of whether it's resilient enough to become more decentralized and distribute the mining power across the world. So although it sucks in the short term and miners sort of have to rethink how they're going to keep their operations going, I do think in the long run it'll make Bitcoin a lot more resilient. But I'm curious to hear Nishal's point of view as well.
Look, the decentralization part was also something that I would have said, because I strongly believe that this is an opportunity for other countries to get a strong foothold in the whole I would say mining area, where China has been predominantly like probably the only country. The moment you hear Bitcoin mining, people say China, and I think that's all going to change. But I think the other aspect, something that you can look at is that what is happening is large countries seem to be not really bothered about crypto, and the smaller countries like El Salvador that you speak about, they seem to understand that this is probably an edge for them. And that's true. At least all of us believe that countries that adopt this and embrace it are probably going to go ahead faster than the others. And I'm glad to see that it's not large countries, but small nations who are doing. And that's what startups are all about. If the large company is always innovated, there's no use for a startup. So I think Bitcoin is just behaving in a way where it's making every small country a new startup, which has the opportunity to work on a technology that others are probably shunning away. And I think that's a good thing. So I look at this as probably an opportunity for other small nations to be entrepreneurs, to be startups all over again. And if the last several hundred years they've not had an opportunity to compete, I think now they have that chance, and they should not let go of this. So yeah, I think it's just some opportunities for new countries to sweep in and have your moment. I think that's what this is.
On that note, what's the tipping point that's going to get like more countries into the action?
I think it's going to be a combination of several factors. It's like software. What was the tipping point at which nations understood that it is time for them to get in? And there's no definite answer, but I think in valuation, maybe a $15-20 trillion market is where some large nations will be like, wow, this is probably bigger than our economy size, or as big as our economy. And I think in terms of participation, it's about 120 million people in the world today. When this number goes to 500 million to a billion, that's I think a significant number for larger nations to take notice. I think another 3 to 4 years, probably. Looking at the pace, we need one more bull run, which might happen in 4 years. Probably that is where everyone will take notice.
Is your reckoning similar, Preethi?
Smaller countries, a lot of them, it's like they have less to lose and more to gain by being forward thinking with crypto and Bitcoin in general. Whereas like larger countries, like the US government, the Federal Reserve, like they have a lot to lose if crypto wins. So I think smaller countries definitely have that competitive advantage in the short term. And I think if they kind of latch onto that, that could be a very powerful way to have like a almost like a Superman effect to their economies, and it can take off in ways that larger countries just won't be able to catch up. I think the way the larger countries are going to react is more by regulation, and smaller countries will react through like actually embracing the technology, and only time will tell like how that plays out in the long run.
Well, there's certainly some news about Korea getting into that action, and I'll come there shortly. But Twitter is dishing out NFTs, and of course, WazirX recently started your NFT exchange. How are you reading this move, Nischal?
Look, I left a comment on that tweet by Twitter where they were giving away, but unfortunately, I did not get one of those NFTs. But I think it's a great way for increasing adoption. And you look at anything in the history of the internet, it's always started with giving away for free, and eventually, there's a monetary value that attaches itself. So I think this is and Twitter with the NFT giveaway just made NFTs so much more accessible and visible to everyone. I mean, I could see people who were on that thread. If you go through, they were trying to download wallets that would support NFTs. So it was a ripple effect. It was not just about Twitter giving away NFTs, but helping create an entire ecosystem and bringing in more people into the NFT sector or the NFT space. So I think it's good for adoption, and I believe more companies are going to try that. While Twitter started it, I think this trend will continue. I'm already hearing about companies that want to give away, like earning money through NFT is one means, which probably you'll see the artists and everyone do it. But for larger companies where that revenue may not be significant, but the whole, I would say the transactional nature of giving NFTs to your customers for, doing something good or for maybe sharing or talking about you. I think it's like that in the real world, you used to give that sort of a badge or a trophy or a memento. I think that is what effect that you're going to see. And I'm also I'm hearing, I think the other day I was in one of these sessions online where they were asking me, can we give an NFT as a memento for you at attending this session? So they wanted to understand that. And I think some amazing use cases are going to emerge for NFTs online.
NFTs as ESOPs?
Probably the easiest ESOPs to give them.
Preethi, you were talking about regulation, right? And Korea is considering regulations. And here in Business Insider India, we have a lot of discussion as to what is sound regulation. On one hand, it needs to foster the space and encourage greater adoption and participation. On the other hand, it needs to keep the pump and dump away, right? What's sound regulation look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, if we had the easy answer to that, it'd be probably figured out. But the reality is, like, regulation by nature just hinders innovation, right? Like, no matter how light the regulation is, it does sort of hinder innovation. So it's all about trade-offs here, and like what amount of regulation do we need to prevent the bad actors or bad things happening, but also not completely kill innovation. And I think it's going to be different in each country and how they make those trade-offs. With South Korea regulating, I think in their case it makes a lot of sense because I mean South Korea represents what I think like 10% of all cryptocurrency trading volume or something, and a lot of it was like criminal activity and things like that. And there's South Korea has that is known for having that kind of reputation where some companies and CEOs will have some criminal backgrounds and still operate. So I think in their case it made sense why they want to regulate it and just kind of like calm the market down before it gets too crazy. But yeah, it just comes down to trade-off. Like no matter how friendly you try to make the regulation, at the end of the day, it slows down the process of innovation because like an entrepreneur has to take that extra step or 2 steps or 3 steps to figure out what they need to do to meet those regulatory hurdles, right? Like I was at Coinbase, and Coinbase touts itself as the most trusted crypto exchange. And the way it does that is by, being regulation friendly and talking to regulators before they launch a new product. And as a result, if you remember Coinbase, like for a long time, they had very few assets on the platform. Why is that? Because they had to like comply to the regulation and be friendly. So I just think that no matter what, it just slows down innovation, but that's the trade-off that we have to make if we want to kind of get the best of both worlds.
Well, of course, here in India, the crypto bill will be tabled soon. What are you expecting from this?
Look, I think if you look at not just India, but the global regulatory landscape, no nation has, at least no large nation has really come up with regulations around crypto. They're more in the whole deliberation space. And I have a feeling this is going to last for a longer time. And instead of, hoping for one regulation just coming and sweeping in, I think what was going to happen and what we should hope happens is stages of the regulatory process where you identify some gaps that for sure need to be filled, and just try to regulate that. It's a lot like trying to regulate the internet. You don't have regulations for the internet as such, but you have for parts of the internet. And I think that's the direction probably India and any nation should take, which is identify what are the key areas that you want to regulate. Probably look at your existing regulations and traditional systems. For example, I think like when you think of crypto, we have these completely decentralized applications, and then we have centralized applications like us exchanges, where we deal with fiat as well as crypto. And I think when you get into regulation, probably come sooner on the centralized part, because we do deal with traditional financial systems that already have regulations in place. But when it comes to decentralized applications, it's probably very early. So, I think these breaking them and down into different parts, and then choosing the parts that are probably closer to regulations already, and bringing regulation is probably the right approach. The second is, before regulation, I hope India brings in guidelines, certain do's and don'ts, to sort of protect the customers, ensure that bad actors don't enter the ecosystem, and it's not a wild, wild west altogether. I think that is important, because right now what is happening is the lack of regulation is actually not helping us, it's hurting us. In the sense, you must have heard of the banking issues, the banking sector not knowing whether to deal with us or not. So it's not a state where you want to be operating as a startup, where you have to deal with uncertainties while running your business. I think some guidelines will just probably clear that out. So I think my idea is 3 to 5 years is what it is probably going to take for a country like India to eventually bring in the proper regulatory framework. But it should not be you wait and watch till then. Bring in small parts. Let's hope that happens. We are at least pushing for that as an industry right now.
I just want to stay on that 3 to 5 years thing that is just being discussed right now. Talking about India, right? Is mainstream acceptance of cryptocurrency something that's decades away, a long time before people start putting it as a part of your portfolios, or do you think India is going to move quicker?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's a function of time, because, well, for India specifically, I mean, I think they'll go faster than some other countries, because majority of India's population is young, right? So young people are more open-minded about new things like this, whereas an older person is less open-minded about it. But I do still think it's a function of time, because this thing is new, right? People have to wrap their heads around it. And anyone who's gone through the crypto rabbit hole knows that it takes a lot of time to really get and understand what this means and why it matters. So I do think it's a function of time, but I don't think it's decades and decades away. I think in the next decade, we'll see almost everyone in the world, or everyone in India, own cryptocurrency, whether that's 1% of their portfolio or 50%. I don't know, but I think we'll see that happen in the next decade, where everyone owns some crypto.
So is the next decade a number that works for you as well?
I'm more optimistic. I think maybe 5 to 7 years, I think we're going to see at least 100 million plus people in India owning crypto. And I think that's a significant number, where, what's the definition of mass adoption is another thing. I think maybe 10% of your population owning an asset class is probably pretty significant. Right now in India, it's probably less than 1%. So I think a 10x jump, I definitely think 3 to 5 years is doable in India. And that will probably align with the regulations coming in eventually. So that's my view.
Yeah, that's a pretty significant reckoning that the both of you have given, and this is important for people who are trying to gauge the horizon. But at this point of time, too, there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. FUD. Just to break it down for them, right? What's the real worry and what's the unnecessary worry, Nischal?
I think the real worry is. Look, while it's all amazing, there's still a technology that's just 10 years old, and it's very new that way. And you have to understand that it would, I would still put this in the high risk category if you are looking at it as an investor. The second is we don't know what direction this would go. Maybe this is the peak. Maybe this is really the start. It's hard to say. I mean, an optimistic me says this is the start, but there's always a side which says it will probably bottom out, and this is the adoption you'll see, and this is the niche it will remain. So that you have to be aware of as an investor. The second is, I think, the whole unregulated nature is good and bad. It fosters innovation because you could, you think it up, you can go and build it today, and it's amazing time. But also the fact that you can't stop bad actors from coming in. So there's a lot of, though it's reducing, I feel, the scam if you look at in pure numbers, because the market is getting more educated. But that's still a long way to go. As this adoption increases, you'll see millions of more people coming in, and they'll be not really aware of the way of working in crypto. I mean, I still come across people who still think it is regulated, it is licensed, and that you can only have a crypto business or an exchange if the government allows. So there's still that lack of understanding amongst people because they look at the traditional financial markets, they take that learning and they come in. So I think that's something that's a real worry. People falling for scams and unwanted businesses being built in this sector. The I think the what you should not really worry about is the lack of regulation. Like people say, it's not regulated. What do I do? But that's your opportunity. Once it's regulated, everyone in the world is probably going to participate. And where is your edge? Where is your opportunity? So being an early mover, I think you should if you heard about crypto, you should participate. Take the risk, take a calculated risk. Don't go all in, but don't stay all out. I think that's something I think an unwanted worry right now.
You're both champions of cryptocurrency. What's your it's too big to fail argument?
What is my too big to fail argument? I think we're honestly already there. Like, I have a hard time imagining. I think if you asked me the same question 2 or 3 years ago, before the most recent bull run, I'd say there's still a huge chance that crypto could fail and Bitcoin could not work. But I think we've reached that point where it's the meme of cryptocurrency, the idea of cryptocurrency is already approaching everyone's mind. And there's too many believers, I think, for it to fail. And I think now it's just about how big can this actually get? Does it, to Nischal's point, does it stay where it is today, sort of very niche, or does it become mainstream? And so I think, honestly, we're already there, if you ask me.
Nischal, you're there?
Yeah, I no. See, look, I think I wouldn't be in this if I thought otherwise. So I definitely believe, and I think, there's no other way. You find something better in the financial world. For example, sending value over the internet. It's never been easier. And if we can learn from history, whatever makes things easy eventually wins and works. So forget the setups and the things you have to do. Once you have this in your mobile phone, I'm telling you the ease at which you can transfer value to someone else anywhere in the world. People are worried about the regulations and this and that, and this was not allowed before. A lot of things were not allowed before. You could not send a message to somewhere, in any part of the world before without, some third party involved. Today you can, and that's the same you can do with money now. So I think if it's making things easy and fast, it's bound to succeed. The time frame is something which we may not be able to put a handle on, but I think success is imminent eventually. Don't take it as financial advice, but yeah, I think from a technology point of view, I believe it's here to succeed.
The biggest argument for why people think it'll fail is probably regulation. And even that, I think, is still a weak argument because, for example, the fact that centralized exchanges are regulated kind of frustrated some developers, and so they went out and built DEXs, right? That's just one example of where engineers are going to keep building technologies that kind of circumvent regulation and almost become regulatable. I don't know what the right word is. That basically technologies that can't be regulated. So I don't even think regulation is a good argument against why crypto could fail. So yeah, I think we're there now. It's about how do we bring this to the mainstream? And I think there's people all around the world doing really, really good things to bring this to the mainstream, and it's just about time.
When you use that phrase, now that we're there, I remember the time when the value of Bitcoin rose up and you all assumed it couldn't go further up. And of course, that would come and bite us really royally. And that's the leading cause for a lot of people to have what you call Bitcoin regret stories. But beyond Bitcoin, right? What are the other currencies? There are other currencies out there. How do you think about this?
I mean, I think Bitcoin is honestly just a starting point. It's like in the long run, it might represent like 10% of crypto or something. I don't know what the right number is, but it is it's, when you're getting into crypto, right, you learn about Bitcoin and it's a really great starting point to launch your career or whatever in crypto. But then you start to realize that this primitive that we've invented, this idea of a blockchain, this idea of a consensus algorithm, we can actually use it for a lot of different things. And we don't have to just use it for sound money. We can use it to build all sorts of technologies. And this is true with any technology, right? Like just because a technology gets invented for one thing doesn't mean that it can't be used for all the other things that humans creatively think about how to use the technology. So same thing with crypto. It's like, sure, Satoshi invented blockchain for the use of digital currency, sound money, but it doesn't mean that we can't use it in ways like DeFi is using, or NFTs, or name whatever your favorite cryptocurrency application is today. I think there's just so many things that we can use this for, and we're probably like 1% of the way there in figuring out all of the creative ways that we can use this technology. And what's interesting with blockchain is that everyone sort of has a different philosophy on what decentralization means and how decentralized things need to be. So we're never all going to agree on that. So there's a spectrum of decentralization, and there's different ways you can use blockchain across that spectrum. And I think we're going to just see more and more use cases evolve over time. So I think Bitcoin's awesome. I love Bitcoin, but I think crypto is much bigger than that.
So, see, it's like it's an ecosystem being built out. You can't. I mean, before there were arguments of Bitcoin or nothing, or this coin or nothing. But I think it's about creating this entire financial ecosystem, and one cannot exist without the other because they're all symbiotic. You look at Bitcoin; it's seen as that symbol that probably brings the maximum people into this ecosystem. So I see that as the beacon for this ecosystem. But once you're in, and if there was only Bitcoin, I think you'll be so bored. People would just not really be interested in crypto. So keep it exciting. That's where all these altcoins come, because you spend a significant amount of your time trying to understand these protocols. What are they all about? Trying to read more about them. That's the interesting part. Because otherwise, if it was just about investment, you could invest in gold and the stock markets, and you could be okay with it. But I think the fun element is when you have all of these different tokens being created, new ideas emerging. And I think that's what is keeping, and that's why you're seeing such a young population getting into it. You get to learn, and then you get to go back to your friends and say, do you know about this coin? Do you know about this token? It does this, it has this. I think that's the fun part. And one without the other is going to be a boring market. So I see them as that, and this is what is growing the market. It's growing the ecosystem because there are more reasons for me to enter crypto, for me to stay in it, and for me to then probably participate. I think that's how this ecosystem has been growing. So everyone's needed, every token is needed. It's just that before you get in, just do your research and then choose the right tokens that you believe. I think most of them, they're all innovations, and it's just like websites. It's very hard to say which one will work. But if you believe, the difference is, I remember the times when I was one of those people who was early into a lot of websites in the 2010, 2012 era when Twitter was coming up. A lot of these, I could not take advantage of them. The only thing I could do is be an early user. I could not benefit monetarily when Twitter grew up, or when a Facebook grew up. But here, I can be a user, and I can also monetarily benefit if I'm an early adopter. And I think that's the difference, that you will grow even from a wealth perspective into the products that you use. And that's, I think, amazing.
Hey, that one thing about doing research, I'd like to know, where do both of you pick up your signals? I mean, what are your trusted sources? People, Twitter, blogs? Preethi?
Yeah, sure. I've less and less been using Twitter as a great information source, just because it's really hard to know what is and isn't a great information source on Twitter. Personally, I found podcasts to be a really great source of information. There's some really technical stuff as well as less technical stuff on podcasts. Ton of Medium blog posts that people write about crypto. I would say probably like half of the articles on Medium are probably crypto related. And then I don't really read books about crypto because crypto moves so fast that most books get outdated within a year. Like I'm reading a book on Ethereum that was written like 3 years ago, and even that's like so outdated that I have to like look up what's the latest happening in certain things. So I would not recommend people read books because it's just the space is moving too fast. It's not matured enough for books to really keep up. But blog posts, podcasts are sort of my best information source. And the other one is just having private one-on-one or group conversations with people in crypto that I trust because then you can get like intel from people who are in the market who are building rather than third-party sources.
I think I agree with what Preethi said. And apart from that, I've usually found that I've had founders reach out to me. So that's a good way to, probably connect with them. Just ask them what they're building. And you understand who the, genuine founders are who want to really build something versus, you can separate out those who are just looking to jump on an opportunity to make some quick bucks. And I tend to, focus on those who want to really build stuff for this ecosystem. So founder reach outs have really worked well for me on Twitter, on maybe on email. Some cold emails come in. Then apart from that, I think it's usually my close circle of friends and everyone. It's sort of that one layer where they go through something and then they tell me about it, and then I do deeper research. And sometimes it's always also been some token shoots up, and then you want to take notice. You want to be like, what's led to this price rise, and then you read about it. So that's been some of my points where I find new projects.
Talking about tokens that shoot up, I'd like to wrap our fireside chat with this. What do the both of you make of Elon Musk? I mean, what's your reaction when he starts talking about one currency or the other?
I just think, honestly, I think people are taking him too seriously or getting too offended by his tweets. I think he's honestly just he understands the power of memes, right? Like he's been posting memes on Twitter for a long time, and Dogecoin is essentially a meme that has value, and so he's literally just using it as he understands the psychology of memes and is posting about Dogecoin. So to me, like I find it funny. I just think that he's like thinking above a lot of people and just almost like making a joke out of it, but like. I think it's important to also not take him too seriously and not like so emotionally attached to what he says about Bitcoin or Dogecoin or whatever. I think it's really important to just like be an independent thinker and think from first principles about why you believe Bitcoin or why you don't believe Dogecoin or whatever your thesis is. But I take it lightheartedly and I try not to take it too seriously.
Not too seriously. Interesting. Nischal?
Look, I think he's done good for the ecosystem in terms of at least everyone's writing about it, reading about it, talking about it, the media everywhere in the world. And I think probably very few people who've single-handedly been able to promote, at least, make people know there are cryptocurrencies, surprisingly, apart from Bitcoin, with the whole Dogecoin thing that he did. And I think the other aspect, when I look at what has happened to Elon Musk in the past, where the SEC has pulled him up for his comments on one of his statements before, this is sort of a revolt for him, where it's unregulated. He can say what he wants, and he's not giving financial advice. He's just sharing memes, and nobody gets prosecuted for sharing memes. So I think it's probably a revolt. In a way, it shows what crypto stands for. You're building a new financial system. It's completely different. It's being built from this ground up, and I think a participation from people like Elon Musk is going to just further the cause and grow this market eventually. It doesn't matter what his beliefs are, but I think it's just attracting everyone to this new ecosystem that is being built. So it's a good thing, I think.
Are you worried that the SEC is going to start taking notice of memes?
That's what we'll soon understand. What direction this goes.
Lovely. On that note, it's time for us to wrap up. for those of you who are watching this chat, the conversations on crypto will continue on our brand new forum. Now, Business Insider India has just launched Cryptosphere. That's our forum on all things cryptocurrency and NFTs as well. So you can ask away and the community will chime in and help you understand this space better. But for right now, thank you both for joining us today and plugging in. And I look forward to having you both back on Business Insider India. So till our next chat, take care and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ashwin.